started in the womb. You know, that kind of thing, but we don't know for sure. It's just sort of a common sense kind of thing. So I don't think, but as far as virtually any kind of cancer is concerned, even though they have different names, biochemically they tend to respond very similarly. And so I have to say best guess, and I think there's some evidence for this, the child should be eating this kind of food. Not just for cancers, but also for any other kind of disease problems that occur too. We need to change our school lunch program. Yes. Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on the raw foods diet as discussed by Hippocrates Health Center in Florida and other places within the whole foods plant-based diet?
Sure. That's a fairly common question. Lots of people try that. Actually, I'm not a subscriber of the whole food plant. I mean, the raw food diet, if you will. You know, it's a good idea to get more and more to the end of things like salads and fresh fruits and vegetables. Obviously, it's very important. On the other hand, but being 100% and trying to stick to it that way is not really a very good idea, I think. Part of the argument for that is a little bit faulty. It happens to do with live enzymes and things like that. They all die when you get to the digestion in any case, for the most part. But in any case, in the raw food, I actually, someone recently, one of the most best known raw foodists in the country, wrote a couple of stories in New York. He was 70 years old. A couple of years ago, he called me up. He just had a stroke. And I heard from some of my clinical colleagues that eating raw food is, that those folks are not averse to heart disease. Part of the reason is because they tend to avoid grains for obvious reasons, and as a result, use a lot of nuts and, you know, very high fat kinds of things. It puts them in some difficulty. And I think the raw food diet is great going there to get close to it, but I don't see the point of being 100%.
My mom actually just passed away last year from stage 4 cancer, and I was wondering, how far into the cancer stage have you seen whole food plant-based diets reverse cancers?
Yeah, good question. How far into the cancer process can we see something that's beneficial from the whole food plant-based diet? I think you can say it that way. You know, we really haven't studied it quite that way well enough. We have mountains and mountains of data now to look at various parts of it in reference to specific ages and part of the whole food plant. I mean, but the best I can say is that I have heard, this is anecdotal, that like heart disease, you're going to be really close to the end and see benefits. But obviously, there's going to be situations, it's common sense, that unfortunately, at some point in time, it may not be reversible. But I think, I should tell everyone here, I'm actually in the process of raising money now for such a study, and that we have a opportunity to do this kind of study. It's never been done. And I'll share a little bit with you. You may know that the 3 major strategies for treating cancer patients is radiation, chemo, and surgery. Okay, those are more than 3 things. And chemo is usually administered even with radiation sometimes, and surgery, as you also know. So we rely a lot on chemotherapy. I don't know whether you know it or not, but do you know how much it costs to make another chemotherapy agent that gets to the market? What the cost is? $2.5 billion. It's out of sight. $2.5 billion to make another chemotherapy agent. So then the question is, well, are we getting good things out of chemotherapy agents? There's a few instances where certainly there's some, much like life understanding, especially for one or 2 cancers. But recently, a group of Australian researchers and Americans on this report actually had access to a very large database of cancer patients, you know, who had been on chemotherapy, agents of very specific kinds. So they had an opportunity to go into that data set and ask this question: how well are they working? we spent that much money on it, how was it worth it? What they found was that these agents, for a total of 22 different cancers, they increase 5-year survival rates, which is the normal way of measuring them. They increase 5-year survival rates by 2.1%, virtually nothing. And in fact, there's some evidence that just the placebo effect doing nothing probably is better than that. So the evidence suggests that chemotherapy agents, as a group, are very kind of ridiculous way of looking at it. So it's huge. It's so little in return, almost nothing. And so I'm really anxious now, and I have an opportunity with the medical school, and we can do this really good, do it well. So what I'm trying to do right now is to organize a very, very professional study. Done right. It has to be done right. We can't do it piecemeal. The people who are going to work in this project have to be top of the line, and they have to have open minds when they're doing this kind of study. Because the oncology community is like a citadel. To try to break into the oncology community with something new like this is very tough. And so we're raising, I don't need $2.5 billion. We're looking for $6 million only. May sound like a lot, but it's not. We've learned a lot. So if anyone's got a deep pocket here, I really like that because just this stage here that you may find surprising, that this idea is more or less totally rejected by the scientific community and cancer oncologists in particular. I don't care, we have to do it because it's that important.
Have you, within looking into this type of research that you're doing, seen any type of backlash from the big pharmaceutical companies and things like that to hold up your findings?
Yes, of course. The dairy industry in particular, I've been on their list for quite a while. And pharmaceutical companies, I did speak to a group of 115 pharmaceutical company executives, actually here in Raleigh, North Carolina. I spoke all over the place. And I had the good fortune of being introduced by Jim Hunt, the former governor of the state. And you kind of alerted them to the fact that I had an idea a little bit different from what they were doing. And I just sort of told them, you're not going to like what I'm going to say, but here it is. It was very interesting. It was a very nice welcome. And some of them came up to me later and said, if I had known that at the start of my career, I would never have done what I did. So, but the pharmaceutical companies is a wrecking ball. It is huge. Trillions of dollars, essentially, I think is a fair assessment. And they will sell anything they can sell. And they'll tell about a new disease, if they can think of one, and figure all kinds of ways to get us on drugs. And that's our biggest drug problem in the country today, by the way. It's all legalized. That is the biggest drug problem. So yeah, I don't get too much. I had 2 more occasions to speak to groups like that. But I think the ones that are more hostile than any are the food producers. They can get pretty nasty. Like the dairy industry, the meat industry, and people like that. Yeah, I was going to write a book just telling all the stories. I could have told them an encyclopedia. They're back to 1980 actually. And it's not been, it's kind of unpleasant to say the least. It can get very nasty because they're protecting a lot of stuff. And I call it subtle power because a lot of this thing that they're able to do somehow is done in a way in which no single individual necessarily can be blamed. It's like the whole system, number one. Number two, it's kind of hidden because what really does happen, the public doesn't get to see. I've got this, I don't have, not hooked up here, but just to illustrate the point, I have now 4 slides, I guess, at Cornell University, where I started at Cornell in 1956. Then my couple of graduate degrees came back, after 14 years, I was recruited back as a full professional with tenure. So I was interviewed by the president of the university. So I came and I was walking on the water and really had everything. And had lots of students, big program, the biggest program in the #1 department in the country, actually. I thought, I didn't think too much about it, but I thought it was pretty immune from that kind of thing. What Cornell has done is unbelievable. They have, and I've talked about it publicly, but they have just recently built, of all things, they remodeled an old building on the campus, so it's called the Dairy Science Building. That's where my office was, the Dairy Science Building. Coincidentally, I have to say coincidentally. And in fact, the desk I had was the desk that had just belonged to the recently passed professor, the first one that got the Nobel Prize at Cornell back in the 1950s. So I was really feeling real hotshot. In some ways, things were great. I mean, Cornell has been a great institution all through the years with lots of students and that sort of thing. But the power that exists there, even the president of the university cannot withstand. And the president of the university at a critical point in time was a vegetarian. He could do nothing without it. So what they did, they built a building on campus. That building, or mine was, spent $106 million to renovate that building. They left the front facade more or less the same, and then built on the back of it. And very nice building, beautiful auditorium and stuff like that. Spent $106 million on it. And I went by and took a picture of it a couple of years ago, right after it was finished. There was a picture that I could show you if I could put the computer on. It's the citadel of the dairy industry, virtually. They got a big display, all glass, all of the equipment that they can use for making yogurt and all this kind of stuff. And so you walk inside the building, and the auditorium where I used to take classes. Now it's a beautiful auditorium. And auditorium. You walk outside, and in front there's a big statue there, a 20-foot statue, all glass. It's a milk carton. So the kind of money that's in that industry, and the extent to which they will go to actually just flail away and just convince everyone that, what they guys want to save their life is not. And so the question, I'm sorry, going on here so long, but that the efforts by the power brokers is really serious. I did get a chance, I've been lecturing in Europe some. This last spring, I spoke to the European Parliament in Brussels. And I've spoken to the Kentucky Senate, those legislature, and some other groups like that. And that's kind of, in a sense, rewarding. Because somebody hadn't shot me. I think this information is so powerful. We need to know. And I don't think we can stop this. And it's one of the reasons I mentioned about the pod concept, because that pod concept, I think, has potential to do something very exciting. They're building these pods, they're called wellness groups, that's just the name. They got, I don't know, as I say, close to 400. And they're all around the country. It all started here in Mebane, North Carolina, by the way. This is where the movie started. And the pods, when they do something, everybody gets to keep their identity and do the thing they want to do, and all like that. But then when they do something kind of special and useful, they all agree with one thing: they're going to promote the plant-based diet. That's the main thing. But some of them might have legislative interests, some of them have environmental interests, some of them have other kinds of interests, and so on. Then when a pod does something interesting, then it's picked up, and make a little video out of it, and shared almost instantaneously with the rest of the pod network around the world. So it's a community. It's an online community doing real stuff and just sharing their ideas with others. And that's what I think we need, something like that, because that's a grassroots thing. We can't come to the top essentially. And Bill Clinton, you may know, he was on CNN and he got the book and he got excited about it. It's actually Jim Hunt, Jim McCarthy, actually, one of his friends. and he was on CNN and told about it. He said about 3 or 4 times, he said, no dairy. I couldn't believe, I said to myself, you're a pretty smart politician, but on that one you blew it. And so he's saying that a few times, but then came this election, and I already heard from someone in the room, named his wife, tell the rest of them, don't you dare say that word again. So he just had to keep his mouth shut during this election to some extent, because it would wipe her off the map. All the difficulties she has, but the dairy sort of take her to it. So I'm kind of hoping, keep my fingers crossed, that after the election, if she's winning, that, maybe we can get back into talking some sense again about the dairy industry. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the quality of our foods? In terms of
Quality of the food?
organics and technology?
Right, it's a good question. We've got the GMO question to worry about these days, and I don't support that. Not that we have demonstrated problems with it at the moment, but we never know what can happen in the future, for one thing. You can't change genes like that and not expect to see possibly some problems in the future. So the quality issue, that's one. The second one, I think, the quality thing is just contamination of various kinds of E. coli, salmonella, and that sort of stuff. And what can I say? I mean, I actually know the FDA very well, and I know they're a reasonably honorable bunch when they're looking and setting up these programs and screening things, but they can't do everything. They can't screen and test everything. And we eat food, for one thing, that is grown on soil is not as good as it used to be. That's problem number one. It's also mass produced, so it's subjected at least to contamination from time to time, which we see. And a lot of this interbred food, or if you're plant breeding, has led to food that bigger, riper, looking better, but it doesn't taste the same. It has the same value. So we've got a lot of mixture issues that we have to be concerned about. Best thing is go grow your own garden, which I kind of like. And I think, maybe we'll figure out a way going forward. There's a lot of people working on that. Farmers markets, they're big here in Raleigh, of course. Farmers markets, trying to get organic stuff as much as possible. By the way, organic thing, people think if I could just eat organic food, I'm going to solve a problem. That's not very true. The organic effect, the organic food effect on health and disease is only a fraction of the effect that's caused by just changing the kind of food you eat. I'd rather have slightly contaminated plant food than raw, uncontaminated animal food. It's a huge difference. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on fasting, including fasting in whole foods nowadays, like juice fast, water fast?
On gluten-free, you said gluten?
Fasting.
Oh, fasting, on, so.
Yeah.
The fasting thing is interesting. I actually did that myself, not believing much in it, some years ago, about 20 years ago. How many of you have heard of the chemical called dioxin? Very toxic agent. I'm the person who first isolated that. I was at MIT. And I got pretty well contaminated with the dirty stuff. And so I ended up with some neurological problems in my mouth and things for years. And finally it just got worse. I couldn't like sugar. And so without holding my mouth and stuff like that, it got into the nerves in my jaw and stuff. And my body, I was still loaded up at one point 800 times as much oxygen as I should have, above the national limit. That was 25 years after I did that. My friend who was doing this in SDA, he died when he was 41. So I got pretty hit hard with that chemical. And so the only thing I could do after trying all kinds of other things was to do a fast. And I couldn't quite believe it because fasting can get rid of those toxins. So I did it for 12 days the first time. Didn't see much benefit. I got the second time. And 6 months after that second time, all of a sudden it started to clear up. And I think it really has to, it's an interesting time because it was a time when I was getting all my data New York Times article came out, it sounded exciting, then I run into this stupid problem, and all that came together and sort of pointing out and showing to me that our bodies have an enormous capacity to recover. It really is interesting. And fasting can be part of that process, and maybe a very useful way to get doing it. And the best fasting place in the country by far, if anyone's interested in that, and I don't get anything from it, but I just really believe in them, is True North. The name is Santa Rosa, California. And you know, they see miraculous things change. That in combination with then going to a plant-based diet is one way for those who have serious problems. Do a fast, get on the diet, go on with it. It's a nice introduction to really changing what it takes. Yeah.
What do you think of like naturopathic medicine and alternative medicine?
Naturopathic medicine, alternative medicine. That's that when it came, it's a very old concept, of course, as you may know, but in more recent years, last 2 or 3 decades, I think it came into vogue, in part because some people get kind of upset with the current system. And so, and it tends to embrace all kinds of things. There are a large variety of things. It tends to be unregulated. And so unfortunately in that business, you do have people doing things that aren't very well tested, or they're useless. So one's got to get involved in that smartly, with some awareness of what it is and checking things out. Having said that, on the one hand, on the other hand, they do some things that are very exciting. And their training is not quite as rigorous as the MD, but it's pretty good. And I spoke at the main university, Baxter University, that does that. And they're good people, working hard, coming up with some ideas that are quite interesting. And I know some naturopaths that do good work. But it's one of those areas that they're sort of outside the norm, doing some things, aren't regulated. That may be a problem to some extent, but unfortunately there's too many people in that field too who kind of drift into it and then don't, find it going very well, making some money and that's about it. But so is true with doctors. So is true with researchers that I'm in too. You always have that problem. Yeah.
I've seen numerous recommendations to limit the percentage of plant-based protein that you get from soybeans, presumably because of effects on hormonal balance. Is that valid? And if so, are there other plant-based protein sources that can have similar problems?
Yeah, the soybean thing, of course, is talking about phytoestrogens, plant estrogens. True, there are some chemicals in soybeans, and I would also say for other legumes as well. It's not publicized, but for soybeans has been the ones most talked about. There's some chemicals in there that when they're isolated and they're given higher doses, they certainly have estrogenic effects, which tends to be associated with breast cancer in theory. In other words, women who have higher circulating levels of estrogen have a higher risk of breast cancer. Okay? And so the story emerged many years ago that soybeans might be a problem because they're going to spike estrogen in them. That problem first appeared and was talked about in the 1970s, 1980s. And I really became aware of it because I was in the Philippines doing some work there. And there was an interest for the Philippines to develop an export crop. And soybeans was a choice. So they were raising soybeans, you want to ship it here to the West and Europe and so forth. And the dairy industry got wind of it. And they really just put up a real fight. Because it was another source of protein, it was said to be better, sources and so on. So the dairy industry really publicized this phytoestrogen effect. Stress. And that was the attempt to make soy burgers for school lunch programs. Then it really hit the fan. The dairy industry really got upset. But the soy industry hung around and started doing their thing. And they became an industry unto themselves in the last 20, 30 years. They're pretty powerful. so they could slam you back. You know, it's sort of like watching a tennis match. And I think coming back to the substance of the issue, even though those chemicals are in food, have estrogenic activities when they're taken out and tested like that, when the consumers whole food, no problem. They actually act like anti-estrogens. So it's a benefit that we consume them, because where it tends to mitigate the activity of estrogens in our bodies, especially for women, of course. And so, that's not generally known. On the one hand, though, there might be some problems if we're working with protein isolates, you know, the texture of vegetable protein and stuff like that made out of soy. And a lot of it, I wouldn't advise that. But it's a good food. It's really good food. Yeah,
So stick with the whole bean and avoid the isolates.
yeah, eat the whole food. Yeah, I have to say it's good food. Yeah.
What percentage of the milk production industry is being displaced by the alternative milks like soy, coconut, and nuts?
Good question. The question is, what percentage of the milk industry has been displaced by some of these new products? Rice milk, oat milk, almond milk, soy milk, so forth. I don't really know. All I do know, though, that the sales of dairy products are going down. They're going down quite substantially in the last 5 years.
There's a coupon for milk now.
Pardon?
There's a coupon for milk now.
There's a coupon for milk? What does that mean?
Means that word.
They have a coupon for regular milk now, which I don't think they've ever done that before in the past.
I think they're gasping for air a little bit right now. And that's another whole issue. The dairy in this country, I don't know what percentage it is at the moment, but factory farms are making a lot of the milk we now consume. And huge, huge farms. I live right near the largest factory farm, dairy farm in New York State. I jog by there sometimes and I sometimes wonder, maybe I shouldn't. They're milking, last I heard, 5,000 cows, you know, and milk 3 times a day. They're at 96, sort of milking flowers, they call them, milking 96 cows at a time, big operation. And I think that whole trade, factory farms, you know, it's ridiculous. The way we actually handle animals just to produce the food we should not be eating. It's crazy. But that's what we do. Yeah.
Thanks again for staying and sharing all this. I'm sure we all appreciate it. But so when you were talking about Dr. Esselstein's research and you know how his whole food plant-based diet cured almost 100% of his patients who followed it directly, how did an exercise regime fit into that? So what importance and what role do you think that plays, you know, as a holistic picture as a program?
It's important. There's no question about it. I mean, sometimes people want to say, okay, 80% of the effect is food and 20% is exercise or vice versa, something like that. We can't apportion it that way. I think, you know, a holistic lifestyle, I think it really begins with food. I mean, Esselstyn demonstrated that quite clearly because he did not tell them anything about exercise. They got these remarkable results without the exercise component. On one hand, on the other, there's some things about exercise that we all know it's good. We've got some pretty good evidence for that. And there's a sort of an interrelationship between food and exercise that works to the advantage of both, especially regarding the protein content. We did some studies like that too. It turns out that when you're consuming lower protein diets, we had animals again with years from that, in cages that has a little exercise wheel. Put them on a low protein diet, the ones who weren't getting cancer, put them on a low protein diet. A lot of people thought they would have exercised less, they exercised more, twice as much. And then at the same time, it turned out that they actually were consuming more oxygen during that period of time. They were actually more energy, more calories, more exercise. And it turned out that there's mechanisms available for the body to operate that way. We tend to make a fatty tissue when we consume a low protein diets. What happens when we consume a lower protein diet, like generally present in plants, what happens is the calories we consume, a higher proportion is burned off as body heat or involuntary exercise. And so when we eat in this way, it seems that when we eat this way, we feel lighter, more likely to want to exercise. We've lost some weight if we have weight to lose, and that helps too. But so that eating the food can lead to more likelihood of exercising more. It's like the olden days when we had turkey for Thanksgiving and all that very rich stuff. You know, you feel so sluggish afterwards, and if you eat this way, you don't get that kind of effect. And so food can lead to a tendency to want to exercise more for a couple of reasons. I had a friend who was in Texas. He was on George Bush's physical activity committee. He had a big store, a big store down there, athletic store. And he was running things for people just on exercise. He used to say, I can take a bunch of people way overweight, get them to exercise, they want to eat better. So we used to have this discussion back and forth. He starts to exercise and start eating better. We can start with food first, and then we'll exercise better. So clearly the two work together. We can't put numbers on it, but it's really got to work together. Yeah.
Can you talk about your ongoing research, and is there any way that we can donate to the studies that you're working on?
Yes. You can donate to the University of Rochester. It's called Nutrition for Medicine Program. That's one way. Yeah, that's probably the best way, because right now we've raised some money and my son has headed it up, and it's really nicely organized. And so now it's kind of getting into doing some preliminary parts of the study to make it go. It's a 5-year study once off the ground, and I'm sure we can learn quite a lot within 2 to 3 years. And we're trying to establish it in such a way that once established and, you know, described well enough, then other institutions can do it too. So we want to make a multi-institutional study. Once we show the benefits that are going to be occurring, I'm very confident, other universities will want to take it up. And one such university I know is the University of Cincinnati Conference of Cancer Center. In fact, they're going next week, just to Italy, to a conference they're putting on, just on that point. The University of Cincinnati and some others, possibly Kaiser program as well. But University of Rochester, nice university. There's a big hospital system, 25,000 employees. It's a very big hospital system, and very well established in research. So that's one way. Okay. Yeah.
One thing, just, I realize I came in late and I apologize. However, my husband had 7 heart attacks and died on number 7. But at number 6, he decided to take charge of his own health, and he heard about Dr. Esselstyn. He followed his regime. And it just coincided with when he was in rehab. So every day they checked his numbers. And honestly, he started this, and in 1 week, numbers that had been up for 18 years, I forget, the triglycerides were, I don't know, 400 some insane number. They would, I can't remember which were which, but one went down in 1 day, one in 2 days, one in 3. They were all down in 1 week. He cut his medicine. I don't know, he was able to leave out some of them, cut statins down to 0.5 every 3rd day. It was unbelievable. So if you have any doubt in your mind, the only reason he's not with us now is because we didn't start it between one of the earlier heart attacks, because he had too much muscle damage, and then there was some emotional issues with his children, and that's what finally took him out with number 7. But if you have any doubt at all, I saw it happen, and the brain fog was gone. The desire to exercise was there. Sleep was back. It was unbelievable. At one point, it was where you really could not get out of bed and put his socks on. I had to put them on the floor. And so when I think about the remarkable changes, I can only thank you so very much, Dr. Ellison, and say, please, if you have the slightest urge, try and see how much better you feel. It's just a miracle.
That was my son. Yeah, that kind of thing, we've seen that a number of times, and that son that just called, the oldest one for the movie, he did it 6 times for the movie. You had seen that plant cremation, and that's part of the story in that film. And my other son is doing it, doing his processor, and there's still more doing it. Dr. Espen's son is doing it. Dr. McDougall and others are doing something similar.
Well, maybe if they track enough, I don't know.
Oh yeah, it's dramatic.
But honestly, this was over way bad, I don't want to say it, but I had to write a letter at the end. It was the best patient they had had in 25 years since they had been open. The only one, he went from a 44% risk of another event to 11. Less than the average person on the street.
It happens. It's dramatic. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.